Hello, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. Welcome to Shifting Perspectives. So I shifted into the fifth perspective of the U of I yesterday. And I'm now tracking the increments of the U of I, or of each perspective shift. There are 12 stages within each shift. And because Mother Nature loves her math. I love her. So this is beautiful. I had a massive, I'm now in the third stage. I want to document this. Let me go over to my documents because I'm recording this. I'm actually doing like a full journal entry, the fourth ethical perspective of the U of I. So now I am in the third stage because the third stage is integration. Third stage of integration. So I am in the third stage now of the third stage of integration of the fifth perspective of the U of I. So I'm going to translate that. That's the third stage of the fifth stage of the second stage. That's right. And yes, it is the 16th February. And we're going to document this as 11:21. I'm going to say 11 a.m. because that is really when I had the mass epiphany. And I went, oh my God, I can see it now. So this is what I realized. This is what I learned. You are a universe. You are a self system. Like, yeah, we're going to go through this. You are a self system, which I call the self universe, which is made up of components. When you are in the ethical stages 1 through 4, your purpose, your goal is to build the components. Not even build, you are to explore your options for choosing your components. In the fifth ethic, you now have enough components that you can choose what you want to build with those components. Now, whatever you choose to build with your components is going to determine your life purpose, your life goal, your everything. And this is the summation of your components. Now, not all of the components. Yes, all the components. You're going to have greater components and lesser components. And you have to prioritize which components are more important to you. Now, this is where a lot of people fuck up relationships, love, romance, childhood, children, parenting, all of it, is they take a component and they make it a core base. This is not healthy. This is unstable. This is wrong. This is where trauma, mental illness, and shit decisions come from. Is you are building a ship. The ship is made up of many parts. The strakes. Let's break this down even further, though. There is the mast, and there is the spine of the ship, the ship's spine. I cannot remember the actual name for it right now. What is it called? I have to look this up because it's always at the forefront of my mind, and right now I'm having a blank. Spine of the ship is called the keel. Keel hauling. That's why it's called keel hauling. So you have the keel, which is the ship's spine. Okay. And then you have the mast, which is always built off of, I know a lot about ships. So you have the keel, and the mast is built in the keel. Like you have the keel, and then you have the mast, and then you have the strakes. And then you lay down the different floors and the planks. Then you have your ship. Okay. So the keel and the mast are your core. And then you've got the strakes that hold the ship together. Now, this is what you are building. These are the components of your ship, which make up what you love, which is what you're supposed to be choosing between the first and the fourth ethic. That's all you're doing. You're sampling the buffet. You're going out. People are like, well, what about my love? What about my husband? What are you doing at 4 years old choosing a husband? These ethics were supposed to be built by the time you were 4 years old. 4 years old. The self is not built by your husband. Your children do not come into existence until, on average, between 20 and 30 years old. If you are waiting 20 to 30 fucking years old to have a primary core to the self, pause, step back, reflect. Are you waiting 20 to 30 years to define yourself? What are you doing prior to that? You don't meet your husband or your one true love until you're 20 to 40. What the fuck are you doing living through life prior to that point without defining the self? But you have the self at birth. By the time you are 4, if you had proper parenting, you should have the components to build the self. Now, today, about an hour ago, I remembered something. And it was like the biggest fucking, remembering. When you heal, it is the process of understanding and remembering. This is all it is. It is the exchange of understanding and then remembering, and then it calms you. You understand, you remember, you calm. You understand, you remember, you calm. This is the spiral of healing. Okay, this is the healing spiral. Now, there is a trauma spiral that does the opposite. You forget, you don't understand, or you have confusion, and you panic. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They're in the trauma spiral. So the trauma spiral, we're going to break this down again, is confusion, forget, panic, or fear. Confusion, forget, panic. Confusion, forget, panic. And it spirals you down and out of control. The opposite side of that is understanding, remembering, calm. Understanding, remembering, calm. So you know you're healing when you're understanding, you're remembering, and you're calming. My work targets understanding. That's all I do, is I focus on you understanding. Because when you understand, you calm down. And then you can remember. Because when you remember, or when you calm, your subconscious mind goes, oh, it's safe to remember. Yes, calm equals safe to remember. And fear equals danger to remember. So by understanding, it calms you down, and then you remember. By having confusion, you have fear and panic, and then you forget, because the subconscious mind makes you forget to keep you safe. But that causes more confusion, which causes more panic. So you forget more, which causes more confusion. Your subconscious mind is really in self-destruct mode at this point. Over here, it's understanding, and then you calm, and then you remember, which makes you understand more, and then you calm more, and then you So I've been in this healing spiral for about 3 years now, and I'm remembering, and today I remembered literally the last final piece. I am a scientist, and I had to choose between love or science, but I am a scientist. I am science. And I had to choose between love and science. The first time I had to choose between love and science, I was 5 years old. I remember I wanted to be a scientist, and I was told I couldn't do that because I was a girl. And it was made very clear that if I chose science, my daddy would not love me. If I chose science, my family would disown me, because my family was so religious based that they would disown me if I chose science. But I was a scientist. So they threatened my belonging. They took away my clan. They took away love. And they made it clear that I would not be loved or have a place of belonging if I chose science. And as a result, it became dangerous to love myself. Dangerous to love myself. And that is at the core of most trauma. It's dangerous to know who you are. It is dangerous to love who you are. And even I remember yesterday, I was crying yesterday, and I was realizing I want to be a physicist. And I was putting all the pieces together, and in the back of my mind, which moved very, very quickly to the forefront, and I asked the question, how will I ever find a man to love me if I'm a scientist? Because men don't want scientists for wives. We only have one scientist in all of, we have Madame Curie. Women are not allowed to touch science for this reason. It's a man's profession. And I was going, okay. And while I was remembering the science and it was coming back to me and I was sharing it with my partner, I'm going, is he even going to like me because I'm a scientist now? Oh, I know he will. I know he will. Because he actually calls me a cookie scientist. And I am. I'm a cookie scientist. So I scientist the hell out of cookies. Like, I Monica'd the cookies. That's what we call it. I Monica'd the cookies. I was tired of burning cookies, and cookies are just chemistry. So I studied chemistry to learn about elevation, fat, protein ratio to moisture, to understand how baking soda rises and works in ratio to fat, protein, well, not protein, but fat and flour. And I was able to perfect the cookie. And then I make my own recipes. I have like 8 of my own cookie recipes that are in my brain. It's one of my dreams to own a bakery shop in New York City and sell my cookie recipes with my hot chocolate recipe. But I don't want to run it. So it's probably going to be one of those things that I invest in, hire people and say, here, run my shop. Because I want my cookies with my hot cocoa without me having to sit down and bake them. But here's the recipes. I have some really fucking awesome recipes. I have raisin clove cookie. Anyway, so he calls me a cookie scientist. But it was not at a time when I was safe to remember who I was. So when you are healing, what you are really dealing is building the components of the self. And my primary component is science. Science is the core of my self. It's who I am. So when you are choosing who you are actually choosing the components of the self. And you are building your ship. What is the core thing? Now, here's the other thing, is if you choose people, people die. People die. They expire. So you should not be building your life based off of something that expires. I had a cat that was literally the keel to my life ship. And when she died, that is literally the chain reaction that sent me spiraling into severe mental illness, because I used her as an emotional prosthetic to keep my life and my sanity afloat. And when she passed away due to mouth cancer in 2013, I went fucking insane. Hence my book Broken 2 years later. So choosing an individual, a child, a love partner, a family member, or a cat, a pet, is your life purpose is dumb, because that person will die and will expire. And then what are you going to do? So this is a real ugly truth about human decisions. This is where we are our most dumbest, is when we choose our entire life ship to depend upon the life expectancy and mortality rate of an expiring subject. Don't do this, because when that person dies, that's where we see broken heart. That's when we see people die. That's when we see people commit suicide. If you're a mother and you've decided to make your identity all about your children, do you know that the number one leading cause for suicide is empty nesting mothers? Yeah. So let's not do this. Your identity needs to be something that never expires, because people die. Do not depend your life expectancy on a mortality rate. And that's exactly what we're doing. Don't fucking do this. It's suicide. It is literally mental suicide. This is mental suicide. We have an entire culture. I watched Twilight the last 2 nights. I've been watching the Twilight movies. And I'm going, oh my God. Now, that's not bad because it's bad. But they're vampires, so their mortality rate is like non-existent. It's still toxic and codependent. Don't do it. But I'm looking at it going, interesting. At least they're a little bit smarter because they're immortal to an extent until someone decides to kill them. Like I said, do not depend your life ship on something with an expiration date. It's for me, it's like choosing to have purpose so long as the milk doesn't expire in your fridge. And this is a really unpleasant conversation that no one really talks about, but this is the truth. People die. Forever, love you forever. Come on, people die. And choosing a career, choosing education, choosing a goal, choosing something that isn't with an expiration date. The love of your life is a component of your life. And this is it. It's a component. Now, all components are built like this. The components of the self system should be based off of what you love. These things should have no mortality rate, zero mortality. which means they should not be people. Zero mortality. It should not be friends or a clan. It should not be something that denies your growth. It should allow you growth because you're going to grow. Religion does not allow this. A religion does not allow growth. Not at all. Because as you learn and as you grow, you pass through spirituality and then you realize that it was physics the whole time. And now you have a religion that now is uprooting your keel. And instinctively, logically, we know this because physics is God. And therefore, you've created an if-then clause in your system that says, if physics is God and I am dependent upon the belief of this God, then I am not going to learn further because then I will realize that physics is God, therefore God does not exist, not in the entity in which my entire faith and religion is based upon, therefore I'm not going to grow. So to preserve your own ignorance, you're not going to grow. To preserve your own ignorance, you're not going to grow. So you literally, religion is a preservation of ignorance. Oh God, truly, really, it is a preservation of ignorance, which is why there's the phrase ignorance is bliss, is because it's and knowledge is power. Ignorance is bliss and knowledge is power. Think about it. So it cannot be something that inhibits your growth because you're going to grow. It cannot be something that's mortal. It cannot be something that is going to reject you with mistake or change. So this is it. When you are building the foundation of your ship, when you are building the keel and the mast of your ship, of your life ship, it needs to be something that preferably nurtures growth. Not just allows it, but nurtures it. And it cannot resist your growth. It cannot reject you. It cannot require perfection from you because you're going to make mistakes. It's going to require no mistakes. It has to be unconditional. Unconditional love, unconditional belonging, and unconditional happiness. And it cannot be mortal, and it cannot hinder your growth. This is going to be the foundation of your life ship. Now, you now have components of the self. Those components are going to give you motivation, and they are going to give you a heading, a direction. And a point of origin. These are fucking important for you to have. These are the components of the self. And this is all stage 1 of the self. This is what's going on between stages ethical perspectives 1 through 4. At 5, around the time when we are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? You get to choose your primary components and what you're going to build with your components. This is when you start putting together your heading and your destination in life. You choose your primary components versus your lesser components. For instance, if you love pizza and your whole life is about pizza, that's a lesser component. Your primary components are going to be the things that never change. For instance, I love science. I am a writer. I am a musician. I love theater. That is never going to fucking change. I love fucking theater. Never going to change. I love knowledge. I love education. I am a lifelong learner. Those are my components. Those are my primary components. I value education and learning so much that it is my living existence of just consuming as much as possible and giving it to other people. This is all I do. This is the core of my existence. Now, choosing the components. My component is science, understanding comprehension of the self, and reality, ontology, the study of the self and realism, and what are the components of reality. And then from there, you're going to start selecting other components. This is where a love comes into your life. Now, every time you set one of these things, it's like a pyramid. Every time. So everything you build with a component from that point henceforth is going to fall to whatever level. So if you remove something from these construct, you're going to lose everything that's built on that component. For instance, we call the baseline a fountainhead. The fountainhead is an architecture term. I love architecture. It's geometry in real life. So a fountainhead is the core weight stone of a foundation, so that if you take out the one piece, the whole thing will come down. The fountainhead is the most good. It's literally the loading stone of a foundation. You take out that fountainhead and the whole goddamn thing's going to come down. If you go to the base of a building and you find the one primary support beam, that's the fountainhead. A lot of people make the fountainhead the love of their life. Don't do this. This is poor construction. This is literally an order of operations that is so scrambled. And this is why people are miserable, is because they have all of their orders. It's so horrible. I see, like, it's like looking at the Weasley's house. It's like, what the hell is this chaos? And it requires magic to hold it up. And it's like, what the fuck? Or just physics, just use physics to hold it up. And you don't have magic. You're not in the Harry Potter world. Therefore, you require a fountainhead. Do not make your fountainhead a person who is mortal. So everything that falls to that point will come down. So if you start putting a love in this composure, if you make that love a component, the whole thing's going to fall down to that level. You don't want this. You don't want this. So that being said, when you do consciously make the effort to introduce people into your life as a component, whatever you build on them is going to now make them an intricate part of your life ship. This is where we really fuck this up. Is everyone paying attention? You should not ever build with them as components. They can help you. You have your life component. They've got their life components. They should not be life components. Not ever. Not your children, not your partners, not your spouses. They should be builders with you, but not this construct itself. And this is the difference, is you've got the construct and then you've got the builders. And people will use people as constructs when they're just supposed to be the builders. And you can't do that because it will not survive. A lot of people don't trust, and they want a builder to stay with them for the rest of their life. Call them crew members. They want a crew member to stay with them for the rest of their life. So they build them into the construct to ensure that they won't leave as a way of security. This is actually an emotional prosthetic. The crew needs to be free to go and leave as much as they want. And if they choose to stay with you for the journey, fantastic. But to put them as a construct, as a primary component in your construct, the whole thing will fall down when they leave because they're not mortal. And this is where we really confuse a construct, an integrated whole, with components when they really need to be over there. And then from there, you have all of the lesser components. Now, it might be something simpler, like, let's say, for instance, I love travel. I love travel. Like, it is in my future that I'm going to be traveling all over the fuck place. I'm going to be doing my podcasts here shortly where I'm going to be in Paris going, I'm in Paris today. And then the next day, I'm in Milan. And I'm going to be going global hopping. Like, I'm going to be going literally travel hopping. I'm going to be doing this for quite a while. I see me doing this easily for 20 to 30 years where I'm just globe trotting. And I'm doing all of my philosophical copies all over the world. And because I want perspective. So I very much see me doing this. I will be doing this. So there's the travel. And as a result, I'm going to be building all of these components off of my core travel. Now, if I have somebody to travel with, That's not going to affect the construct as I go places. But I got an adventuring buddy. And that's really what it comes down to. We take these adventuring partners or these climbing partners and we make them the mountain. This is the difference. Is you can have a partner or somebody who's working with you on a project, but when you make them the project, and this is the difference, is you have the construct, you have the project, and then you have the co-partner in the project. And when you make the partner part of the project, now it's a problem because you lose the project when they pass or when they go. Shit happens. And this is where we integrate people as components. And they're not. They're not components. Not at all. People are not components of a self. They are your cheerleaders. They are your crew. They are your fans. They are spectators to your life. And that's really it, is they are spectators to your life. They're not the life itself. You've got baseball is the game. And then you've got players in the game, but then you've got the game itself. And you can have people who are spectators of the game. You have players in the game, and then you have the game itself. But when you take the spectators and make the spectator the game, when you take the players and make the players the game, you can't do that. Now the game falls apart and ceases to exist when one of the players gets traded. And that's the problem. Are you there for the players or are you there for the game? You need to be there for the game. And this is really where a lot of people get this out of order. But what's really going on is this. People are born and they have to choose between the components of the self and love or belonging. And they will almost always choose the belonging and the love over the self because survival depends upon this. And so they throw the self away. Now they have a displaced identity. So now they feel incomplete and unwhole, and now they don't know who they are. So now they seek out other people to plug in for the gap because they have removed the self. And when they remove the self, they don't have a direction. They don't know who they are. And then when you do find someone, and here's the other big thing, is if you do, and you have your assigned players, you have your assigned entity, your life whole. And as you bring people in, it's like saying the crew is the crew is not part of the ship. The crew is part of the journey. And this is really it. This is it right here. The self is the ship. The crew are the players. A lot of people make the crew the ship itself. And that's a problem. But you also need the players and the crew with the ship. Do you need it? Not really. Depends on your ship. Ideally, no. Ideally, you just want to have like guests on your ship, maybe permanent guests, maybe the captain or the navigator. So you can still steer the ship alone if they pass, but you're okay. Now, what a lot of people do is when you bring other people into your life, the question is, are they going to be compatible with your ship? And if you have not defined your ship, well, now you're using people as your ship. So instead of asking the question, are you compatible with my ship? They are the ship. A narcissist is your ship. A narcissist is your ship. This is the problem. An empath is the ship. The empath and the narcissist are the ship. Codependent is when you say to each other, I'm going to be your ship and you can be my ship. What the fuck are you doing? No, no. Get your fuck asses back to the genie bottle, do some self-work and build your own goddamn ship. You are your ship. You are your own ship. You, the self, is the ship. But the empath and the narcissist will go, I'll be your ship if you be my ship. No, that's codependent and fucking toxic. We don't do that shit. No, no, no. You are the ship. You are the ship. And then when you choose people, you have to ask yourself, are you compatible with my ship? But if you have a narcissist who's the ship, game over. If you have an empath who's your ship, game over. If you are somebody else's ship, game over. You have to be the ship. And then you ask the question, are you compatible with my ship? My ship, I am a scientist. And I'm a fucking girl. So now I got to find people who are compatible with that. And I'm going, yeah, good luck. But there you go. So now, but this is my ship. This is my ship. So when I might meet people and I say, yeah, this is what I do. I'm an ontologist. Yeah, fuck you. I'm awesome. I know. So it's, and this is really it. Is now I got to find people who will fit my ship, because my ship is called HMS Ontologist Physicist Soon to Be. That is my ship. So now I have to make sure that whoever I allow in my world is compatible with my ship. And this is the big question. Now, because if they're not compatible with my ship, that'll require that I change my ship to accommodate them. But they're fucking mortal. Why would I fucking do that? They're mortal. Unless you've got some immortal magical thing in your ass that allows you to keep people alive, don't make people your keel. So you've got your ship. You are the ship. You are your own ship. You got to make sure people are compatible with your ship. Now, as the crew comes on, you're going to have two types of crew members. You're going to have permanent crew members, and you're going to have temporary crew members. This is the hard part, is trying to figure out who the permanent crew members are. But it's the ship that's important. And a lot of people make the crew members the ship, so that when the permanent or temporary crew member passes or leaves, you have no ship, and now you're in the middle of the Atlantic going down. Why would you do that? So you've got your ship. Your ship is built off of the components of unconditional happiness, unconditional love, unconditional belonging that allows you growth, never rejects you, and allows you for mistakes and change. They are not mortals. They are not people, because people are mortal with expiration dates. You got your ship. Now, you start selecting crew members. I have something I refer to as the circle of trust. The circle of trust is my really fucking awesome thing. I talk about this a lot. It's on my website under Classroom. And if you type in circle of trust in the search bar in the Classroom, it pops right up. Yeah, circle of trust. I'll go ahead and drop it down below. This circle of trust is a diagram that shows you basically, and this is where a lot of people fuck this up, is because they are not taught how to circle of trust. One moment. All right, there you go. All right, so if you want to look at the circle of trust, it's now in the video description, and you can go there. So the circle of trust is basically the guidelines I use to determine if somebody is or is not. It's how to use discernment to test people to determine if they should or should not be in your circle of trust. And for me, it's very simple, black and white, with stages and levels and tests at each. My circle of trust breaks it down how to field and test somebody. It's called vetting, how to vet somebody to see if they qualify. I put a time frame on it. I say that somebody is required to spend X amount of hours with me. I have not yet defined this X. It's an unknown variable. So I go with 2 years. No one is allowed in my circle of trust without going through 2 years. 2 years. Now, if you spend the equivalent of it's X amount of time or 2 years, I wish I knew that variable X, but I have no way of tracking that. So most people will go through a 3-month period and be like, oh, this person's in. No. And then there's people who meet everybody and they assume everybody is in the circle of trust. Those are empaths. Don't do that. Those are people who have no idea how to use objectiveness to use and keep it. Objective and discernment are really important here. Objective and discernment are at the core of this. Objective discernment is, we talk about boundaries, and I really hate the word boundaries because it's bullshit. And then there's a lot of people who are going around going, well, I'm using my words and I used boundaries. And then we start talking about, well, what did you say? What the fuck are we? Such a red herring. No. Objective discernment. Discernment means judgment, the ability to judge well. My circle of trust is discernment. It is the ability to judge well, and it shows you how to judge well. Objective is your ability to remain unaltered by information, data, or people. So you can hear something without being moved. This is where a lot of empaths go, oh, well, I'm an empath. No, you're not objective. Don't glorify your ill management. I fucking hate the word empath. It's so fucking toxic. Don't use it. You're not a fucking empath. You are poorly managing your emotions. Objectiveness is the ability to see and hear something without taking it in. And if you're good at this, you're objective. If you're bad at it, you're susceptible. People who are susceptible often call themselves empaths because they have no fucking idea how to do self-care to manage themselves. So people who are claimed to be empaths are just susceptible people who have no idea how to properly manage their emotions. You basically, let me really integrate myself into my own brain and break this down. How do you stop being susceptible? Security. Confidence. Security. Confidence. Defined self. There you go. Those are the components. Defined self. Security. And confidence. If you are an empath or you claim to be an empath, how's your defined self? How's your security? How's your confidence? Are those down? Do they even exist? When you have those three components, you are formidable. You have no susceptibility. It doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. It does mean that you can hear something and not give a shit about it. You can extend empathy. You can extend condolences without feeling their grief. Objective discernment is what is required to actually keep yourself safe. And when you practice it, you realize, oh, I can trust people. I just didn't know how before. So we base our trust off of our skill of objective discernment. And people who are terrible at objective discernment blame it on trust. Oh, I can't trust people. No, you can trust people. You just need to know how to use objective discernment to do it properly. There's a lot of blaming in the world of being an empath. It's all about shifting the responsibility when you're an empath. I really hold no glory. I really fucking hate the word empath. It's disgusting. It's a glorification of incompetence. It is a glorification of incompetence. Instead of being acknowledgeable and accepting the fact that you're incompetent when it comes to management, you glorify it. And it's fucking disgusting. So every time I hear someone claim that they're an empath, it just makes it's like, okay, so you are boasting and glorifying the fact that you are poor at managing your own mental health. So yeah, I have a lot to say about empaths. Empath is actually level 1 of narcissism. It's actually, all narcissists are empaths. All narcissists are empaths. If you are an empath, you're actually suffering from a low level of narcissism. And if it doesn't get in check, you're actually in the process of converting over to full-blown stage 3 and stage 4 of narcissism. Empaths are narcissists. Yeah, it's a really ugly truth about narcissism. So, the way I explain it is an empath is a narcissist in disguise, telling everybody that narcissists look like big monsters without realizing that they are the monster. So everyone's walking around looking for the monster narcissist, not realizing that the one who's screaming narcissist empath the loudest are the monster, quote unquote. So everyone's so busy looking for this big, horrible dragon, not realizing that the damsel in distress and the poor empath is the predator. I do a lot of work on narcissism. Like I said, it's a really ugly truth. It's the one truth that people don't really want to hear. Yeah. So When you are building yourself, you are building the ship. When you are selecting the people, you do not make those people your ship. You make them your crew. But you give them the freedom, you preserve their power of choice, which empowers you so that they can come and go on your ship as they please. And they are going to leave you. Everyone does, because we're fucking mortal. They're going to leave you. And the goal is to build a stable enough ship so that when they leave you, you're okay. It's all right. And we have this gross concept of true love and romance and all that shit of, well, true love means I'd make them my ship. No, narcissist and codependent and romance makes that shit up. No, you need to be your own ship. Choose your people wisely, use discernment, use objective to choose your permanent people for your ship. But you can extend them the invitation. That doesn't mean they have to accept it. If they accept it, great. The way I explain it is, I have an X, and that X is my destination, and my partner is not my destination. I have my life, and that is the journey of my self ship, and I'm going towards X. Now, he is captain of his own life, and he's got his own destination. Our destinations do not have to be aligned. That's integration. You don't want them integrated. I can have my own destination. He can have his destination. We can be on our own ships. We can be sailing toward our own destinations. And we can swap captain's logs every now and then and talk about the journey with each of us. But we don't have to be on the same ship going to the same place. We can use interdependence to sail separately and side by side, even though we're going into two different locations. And it's that really is, we over integrate our loved ones into our lives. We over integrate. And when you over integrate, you end up taking in so much of somebody else that you lose the self, because that's how identities are. They get displaced if you over integrate. And you do not want to threaten the identity with over integration. God, I love these words. So that when you realize that your identity must be self-sustaining, and that you can have somebody as celebration and joy, and you can share the experience, but not the ship, not the destination. They have their own path that they have to go down. And what it is we become so terrified, so scared, so fearful that we integrate others as a means to control them. Are you integrating others as a means to control them? Are you trying to self-soothe by over-integrating other people to the point of displacing your own identity? Because that's really it, is an over-integration of others displaces your identity until you become dependent upon them. Oh God, I love these words. An over-integration displaces the identity. Now you have codependency, you have narcissism and empathy. Now you're fucked. And you have to unintegrate. The process of disintegration. I need a moment. The process of disintegration. The process of disintegration. Oh, see, I just remembered something else. Oh, I need a minute, guys. I need a minute. More comprehension. As you remember, you comprehend. So we're going to do it right now, living example, because I set the example. I told you an hour ago, I remembered. And what I remembered was, oh, I'm a scientist, and I had to choose between being a scientist and myself and being loved and belonging. And it was because I was a girl, because they taught me that girls couldn't be scientists. It wasn't that. I was pretty. It's because I was pretty. It was, oh, you're too pretty to be smart. That's what it was. And that's why I hated my looks. I wanted to mutilate my face for a very long time. From the time I was like 12 to 25, I constantly battled with wanting to mutilate my face, because I was taught that if you're pretty, you can't be smart. And if you're pretty, you certainly couldn't be a scientist. So I had the clause, if I'm pretty, then I can't be a scientist in my head. And I wanted to be ugly so I could be a scientist. That is it. That is what I remember. I remember having this conversation when I was like 13 years old in high school, and we were talking about, the girls were commenting about how pretty I was, and I hated it. And I was telling them, like, yeah, at least you guys get to be a scientist. And they were very, very playing. Some of them were unattractive, and they were glorifying my face. And I was like, yeah, but you guys are allowed to be scientists. And they were. They were very much allowed to be scientists. It wasn't, I was so fucking jealous of them because they were allowed, and they excelled in the sciences. And they wore glasses. They were very gawky. They were unattractive. And I was taught that because I was pretty, I could not have science. I had to be a breeder instead. So, yeah, I was told by every man in my life that I had to be a breeder because I was pretty. So, yeah, no, it's remembering. I'm remembering a lot right now. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Which is why I'm like, oh, suddenly I'm like, and every time I remember when I did really, really well with science one year. I mean, fucking good with science. And the boys in my class, like, were, what the fuck? How are you good at science? And it was a boy I had a crush on him, and he scolded me so cruelly for being good at science. And yeah, it's all coming back to me now. It's all coming back to me. I'm remembering. So I remember, now I understand. And I'm like, oh, those are the pieces I'm missing. And now I remember more. So like I said, when you're in the healing spiral, you know you're healing when you do start to remember. And then you get more understanding because you're starting to unintegrate. Are you integrate? Let me think about this for a minute. Yeah, you are starting to see the components that are missing so that you can understand the big picture of what you're dealing with. So, yeah. And that's the other thing is, now that I'm remembering, I can go, oh, now I can pursue this. This is what I wanted to be when I grew up. And when they told me I couldn't, because you remember when we're 5 and they're like, yeah, you can't do that. God, I hated that. I remember being 5 and choosing all these careers, and everyone kept telling me, you can't do that because of this. You can't do that because of this. You can't do that because you're pretty. You can't do that because you're religious. And when I was leaning towards science, they were like, yeah, religious, girl, pretty. Oh, no, you're a breeder. You need to get married. It's all coming back to me now. I'm remembering now. So, yeah. All right. So I'm getting my science back. And I'm like, all right. I was going through physics today, and I was breaking down. I can definitely have I don't do degrees. That's bullshit. But I can definitely have the completion of my knowledge in 2 years. So my goal is to have the equivalence of a doctorate in physics in 2 years. And I have I started going through it today. And it's so funny because it's philosophy. It's like philosophy is, it's not a simile. It is philosophy. Oh, yes, please, Dan. Thank you. Philosophy is the theory, the logical theory of physics. It's the logical theory, whereas physics is the application, the mathematical application. That is it exactly. Philosophy is the logical theory of physics, and physics is the mathematical application of philosophy. And that's it. Yeah, you have logical theory and the mathematical application. So I have 30 plus years of logical theory in physics. Then that's it. Which is, and it's funny because physics is actually, or philosophy is called metaphysics. And the ontology is an area of, it is a branch of metaphysics. So it's philosophy, and then existentialism, and then, yeah, let's do this actually. It goes philosophy. My area of study is philosophy to existentialism to ontology to postmodernism. That is my area. But I'm beginning to think it's integrated. I'm beginning to think, because there's realism and then there's postmodernism. And I had this epiphany yesterday. I had an existential crisis yesterday, and I went, oh, no, it was bad. When I have an existential crisis, it's fucking bad. I had an existential crisis last night. I'm like, wow, I haven't had an existential crisis in a very long time. The first time, thank you, Dan. The first time I had an existential crisis, Earl Grey, hot. The first time I had an existential crisis was, oh my God, how long ago was that? 2015. No, 1995. 1995, I had an existential crisis. And it was when I learned that molecules are figments of our imagination. It's when I realized that you think, therefore you are. And that, yeah, which is exactly what physics proves, is that it only exists because you say it does. Yeah, in philosophy, we hypothesize that you think, therefore you are. And then in physics, we prove it. That the only reason why the universe is existing the way it is because we're all here thinking it all up, because our thoughts produce illusion. And now you're getting into realism, and now you're looking at, well, this is ontology, is the study of the theory of realism. So it's philosophy, existentialism, ontology, and postmodernism. That is my path. When I say I'm an ontologist, this is the path. And existentialism was oh my God, I fucking love existentialism. And I started into existentialism in 1995. So that is my path. And then, and physics is just the mathematical application of all the things you hypothesize in philosophy. So physics and philosophy are like this, which is why it's called Metaphysics by Aristotle. So when you start to really break down the construct of the self, that if you do not have a defined self, you actually have an existential crisis going on, because existential crisis. So there's what psychology, I'm not even going to use the word anymore because it's such a fucking dirty word. It's such sloppy, it's nothing. It has no credibility. It is just the mastery of, I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, so what you are really studying in existentialism is your defined relativity to the self, reality, and your purpose in life. Yourself, reality, and purpose. And when you integrate these three components, now you are talking about existentialism. Who are you? The self. Where did you come from? Reality. How did we get here? Reality. Where are you going? What is your purpose? And existentialism rips these subjects apart and explores who and what is the self, who and what is reality, what defines reality. That's when you get into ontology. And then purpose. What is your life purpose? Why are we here? What is the goal of it? Now you're getting again into postmodernism, reality, ontology, and the self. It's the accumulation of all. So yeah, the summation of all. Yeah, which is just existential thinking. Well, existential thinking. Expansive thinking is what I like to call it. Expansive thinking is the study and mastery of how we learn, how we educate, which is the passing on information from point A to point B, and then how to use the mind in an expansive method to shift perspective so that you can analyze a situation from all of its components. My God, do I love my work. All right, I'm going to have my tea and contemplate more about the meaning of life while I look at physics. So thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.